So Sarah Palin, in a case that has important First Amendment implications, is suing the New York Times. And as usual, she made an ass out of herself in it. Let's talk about it in today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. If you share my concerns, maybe you could like this video, subscribe to this channel, maybe even click that little bell that will notify you when I post something new. So my wife loves telling the story about when Sarah Palin was on The Masked Singer. This is a show where contestants wear masks and sing for judges to try to win. When Palin was unmasked to reveal who was the person behind the voice, people said, "Oh, it's Tina Fey." My wife loves that story. As a result, her reaction when she heard that Sarah Palin had managed to mess up her testimony in her case against the New York Times was maybe she should have had Tina Fey do the testimony. Tina Fey, unlike Sarah Palin, is no dummy. Well, if you think this is just an example of the lamestream media casting aspersions at poor Sarah Palin the way she claims, you should note that it's not me saying that Sarah Palin messed up her testimony, and it's not the New York Times saying it. It's their competitor, the Washington Post, who would love nothing more than to see their competitor, the New York Times, kind of twist in the wind a little bit. No, the Washington Post thinks she made a complete ass out of herself, pointing out in an editorial, and I'll, of course, link to it down below, that her usual stick on Fox News and other right-wing media of making outrageous claims and not backing them up with any kind of evidence doesn't play so well in a federal courtroom, where the attorneys for the New York Times and ultimately the judge kept asking her to back up statements that she made. And of course, surprise, surprise, she couldn't back them up. Well, we all love to laugh at Sarah Palin, but unfortunately, there are a couple things we need to remember about her. She was kind of the original right-wing idiot to gain attention by saying any kind of crazy stuff. And she came dangerously close to the vice presidency, despite the complete idiocy that she represents. Her heirs, though, have done much better than her. You have, of course, Donald Trump, who says whatever comes into his mind, no matter how ridiculous it is. And then do we need to mention Madison Cawthorn, or Marjorie Taylor Greene, or Lauren Boebert, or oh, the list goes on now. These are all the heirs to Sarah Palin's idiocy. So we can thank her for opening that door. I guess she's an innovator there. Secondly, this lawsuit comes at a time that is extremely dangerous for the First Amendment. The First Amendment, of course, protects the freedom of all of us to make public statements that may be controversial, because the idea behind it is that we'll have a free market of ideas where people can debate, and ultimately, hopefully, the best ideas will rise to the top, convincing the most people. It's pretty much essential that you have some type of rule in a democracy like ours to operate properly. Well, that, of course, is exactly why the right wing wants to do away with it. And what they want to do away with is an old Supreme Court ruling called Sullivan v. New York Times. And in that case, arising not surprisingly by a right-wing racist from the South suing the New York Times, outraged over his treatment of black protesters, well, that case held that when you're criticizing public figures, essentially people who have stepped into the public discussion of issues, that would be like celebrities or politicians. Well, to be able to prevail in a defamation lawsuit, you need to prove that the party that published the claim acted either with actual malice or reckless disregard for the truth. As we know, an absolute defense to a defamation claim is that the statement was true. You can say whatever you want as long as it's true. The issue comes up if it turns out not to be true. And sometimes claims are made in the heat of political discussion that might, at best, stretch the truth. That appears to be the case with the editorial at issue. Now, it's worth noting, by the way, that this lawsuit that Sarah Palin has filed is over an editorial, something that explicitly makes it clear that they're talking about their opinion, something that should be protected by the First Amendment. What's more is that this editorial was drafted essentially in response to a shooting where a Bernie Sanders supporter went and shot at a bunch of Republican members of Congress in Alexandria, Virginia. The editor of the piece, trying to make the point that heated political rhetoric can lead to this type of shooting, made a largely unsubstantiated claim that a graphic targeting certain members of Congress on Sarah Palin's website led a right-wing radical to shoot Democratic Congresswoman Gabby Giffords in Phoenix, Arizona. Well, it turns out that that connection was tenuous at best. And the New York Times corrected that statement and actually attempted to apologize to Sarah Palin. Nevertheless, she decided to proceed with this lawsuit against them because, of course, they're part of the lamestream media who just hate her, according to her. Again, God forbid that the media actually report what these people say and do. Well, the reason this matters right now is because at least 2 Supreme Court justices, right-wing radicals Gorsuch and Thomas, have expressed the fact that they believe that Sullivan v. New York Times standard needs to be gotten rid of. What that would do is make it possible for politicians to sue the media anytime, basically, they don't like what it's saying about them. It would have what we lawyers call a chilling effect over the freedom of speech. But again, suppressing actual conversation of the issues is exactly what the right-wing MAGA folks want to do. The problem for them, though, is that they've also been known to stretch the truth a little bit as well. I mean, just look at the lawsuit that Dominion Voting Machines has filed against Fox News, for example. Here, unlike the New York Times, Fox News repeated its allegation that Dominion Voting Machines had been compromised in the election and were the source of Joe Biden's false victory. And they stated that lie repeatedly, even after it had been made clear that there was absolutely no basis for it. Fox News is in big trouble in that lawsuit. And the only reason they have a prayer of succeeding is because of the Sullivan v. New York Times standard. We'll see what happens in these lawsuits. I mean, you never know what juries are going to do, but I think Sarah Palin's ability to make an ass out of herself might have sunk any chance she had of prevailing in this lawsuit. And of course, I can assume that Fox News is desperately trying to settle this lawsuit by Dominion Voting Machines against it. But the big question is going to be, in the long run, if this right-wing Supreme Court is going to take apart the protections we have under the First Amendment the same way they've been doing it to labor rights and to the Voting Rights Act, and of course, to abortion. Well, if you like this video, maybe you'd like to check out another video on the Supreme Court's assault on the First Amendment right here. I'll see you then, and in the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.